Ladies and gentlemen, success does not come to the timid, nor does it bow to hesitation. It comes only to those who dare to face the one enemy that stands between where they are and where they are destined to be: fear. Yes, fear, the silent killer of dreams, the invisible chain that binds potential, the thief that robs men and women of their greatness before they even begin. But let me tell you something that the successful already know. Fear is not a wall, it is a door. And on the other side of that door is everything you've ever wanted. You see, every man or woman who has ever climbed the mountain of success had to first conquer the valley of fear. They had to look fear in the eye and say, "You will not control me. You will not control me. You will not stop me. You will not define me." Today, I challenge you to do the same. Fear is the greatest enemy of progress. It is not failure, not rejection, not even ignorance that stops most people from moving forward. It whispers lies into the ears of those with dreams, convincing them they are not good enough, not ready, not worthy. Fear keeps men and women in jobs they hate, in lives they did not choose, and in silence when they were meant to speak. It does not attack the body. It attacks the mind, the spirit, the imagination. And once it lodges itself there, it builds a prison with invisible walls that look so real, so final. Most people never even attempt escape. You see, progress requires movement. It demands action, risk, decision. But fear thrives in stagnation. It feeds on hesitation. It grows stronger every time we back away from something that challenges us, something that could stretch us beyond what we currently know. Fear does not come dressed as a monster. It often shows up as a voice of reason, a cautious whisper saying, "Wait a little longer," or "What if you fail?" or "This isn't the right time." It is the silent force behind procrastination, behind self-doubt, behind every excuse that sounds good but keeps you stuck. The tragedy is not that people have fear. It is that they listen to it. Fear is universal. Every person, from the factory worker to the Fortune 500 CEO, has experienced it. But the difference between those who succeed and those who don't is simple. Successful people move forward in spite of their fear. They have learned to walk through the fire, not because they don't feel the heat, but because they've trained their minds to see something greater on the other side. They understand that fear is a signal, not a sentence. It signals that growth is near, that something valuable is at stake. And instead of running from that feeling, they run toward it. In every great achievement, in every invention, every discovery, every breakthrough, fear was present. It was there when Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. It was there when Henry Ford defied the norms of his time and built an industry from a vision. It was there when Abraham Lincoln faced rejection after rejection before rising to lead a nation. What separated them was not the absence of fear. It was their relationship with it. They did not allow fear to sit in the driver's seat. They acknowledged its presence, but they did not hand over control. They moved forward step by step, sometimes trembling, but never stopping. Fear, when unchecked, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you believe the fearful thought, the more you act in accordance with it. And the more you act in fear, the more you confirm that belief to yourself. It becomes a cycle. Doubt, delay, disappointment. The way to break this cycle is through conscious, deliberate action. You do not wait for the fear to go away. You do what needs to be done while the fear is still there. That is how you reclaim your power. That is how you break through. The mind is a powerful thing. The mind is a powerful thing. It will believe whatever story you repeat often enough. If you constantly tell yourself that fear is a sign you shouldn't proceed, your mind will obey. But if you train yourself to see fear as a compass pointing to where growth lies, you will begin to transform. You will start to associate fear with opportunity, not danger. You will begin to recognize that on the other side of that fear is often the very thing you've been searching for: confidence, clarity, strength, success. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid fear. They think if they just stay safe, if they just stay in their comfort zone, they'll be fine. But safety is an illusion. There is no growth without risk, no progress without discomfort. Playing it safe is the most dangerous thing you can do because it guarantees that you will never know your full potential. The truth is, the comfort zone is a cage, and fear is the lock. To unlock it, you must confront the fear head on, and that takes courage. Not the absence of fear, but action in the face of it. Fear can be trained out of the mind. It can be replaced with faith, with purpose, with desire so strong that it burns through the fog of doubt. The same way muscles are built in the gym, courage is built in the presence of fear. Every time you take a step toward what scares you, you weaken its grip. Every time you act boldly, you expand your confidence. And soon the very things that once terrified you become the milestones that define your journey. What you fear controls you until you confront it. This is a truth as old as time, yet it remains one of the most overlooked principles in the pursuit of success. Fear, left unchecked, becomes a silent master. It dictates your choices, limits your potential, and creates a false reality in which your dreams feel impossible. Fear doesn't need chains to hold you. It whispers suggestions that seem rational, even wise, but they are rooted in limitation. Oh? It tells you to play it safe, to wait, to avoid the unknown. And when you obey those whispers long enough, fear takes the throne in your life. It does not matter how talented, intelligent, or resourceful a person may be. If they are led by fear, their potential remains locked. Fear becomes the lens through which they view the world. Opportunities no longer look like doors to growth. They appear as threats. Risks no longer seem like stepping stones. They feel like cliffs. This is the great tragedy of fear. It distorts your perception and convinces you that survival is more important than purpose, that comfort is more valuable than progress. And so people shrink. They shrink their dreams to fit their fear. They lower their standards, silence their voice, suppress their ideas, not because they aren't capable, but because they are controlled. Fear only maintains its power as long as you avoid it. The moment you confront it, its illusion begins to fade. It thrives in the shadows, but loses strength in the light of awareness and action. When you turn and face what scares you, something powerful happens. You realize that most of what you feared was not real. It was a projection of your own mind, a collection of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios that never materialized. But until you challenge that fear, it continues to control your decisions. It tells you which roads to take and which to avoid. It decides who you talk to, what you try, and how far you go, what you try, and how far you go. I can know. Confrontation is the key. Not confrontation with others, but with yourself. You must look fear in the face and demand truth. Ask, what am I really afraid of? And is it true that this fear has the power to stop me? Often the answer is no. Most fears are rooted in emotional pain, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of judgment. These are not physical threats. They are psychological boundaries, and like all boundaries, they can be pushed, stretched, and eventually broken. The people who rise above the rest are not the ones who feel no fear, but those who refuse to let fear dictate their life. You can measure the size of your life by the size of the fears you are willing to confront. The greater your courage, the greater your freedom. Freedom. Every time you say yes in the face of fear, you reclaim a piece of your power. Every time you step toward what intimidates you, you expand your capacity for growth. And here's the beautiful truth. Fear loses its grip the more you act in spite of it. The first step is always the hardest, but it is also the most transformative. It tells your mind that you are in charge, not the fear. It sends a message to your subconscious that you are willing to lead, willing to try, willing to grow, willing to grow. People often ask how to get rid of fear, but the goal is not to eliminate it. It is to outgrow it. You outgrow fear by facing it over and over until it no longer feels like an obstacle. Just as a child outgrows the dark by learning there's nothing hiding in it, you outgrow fear by moving through it and discovering your strength on the other side. With every confrontation, you build resilience. You learn that you can handle more than you thought, that failure isn't fatal, and that discomfort is temporary. These lessons are only learned through action. Thinking about courage is not the same as acting with courage. Wishing for confidence is not the same as stepping into fear and building it through experience. Your destiny lies beyond your fear. The life you want, the version of you that you were meant to become, lives on the other side of the thing you're avoiding being. It is not a lack of opportunity that holds most people back. It is the presence of fear that goes unchallenged. The person who will achieve great things is not the one who waits for fear to disappear, but the one who sees it and moves forward anyway. A habit of courage is formed in these moments. The more you act, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I never try? That shift in mindset is everything. It breaks the hold fear has on your future. Definiteness of purpose dissolves fear. When a person knows exactly what they want, why they want it, and is willing to pay the price to achieve it, fear begins to lose its grip. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. Confusion opens the door to hesitation. But clarity True, burning clarity creates momentum. It sharpens your focus, aligns your energy, and gives you a reason to push through the resistance. Fear thrives in the absence of purpose. It grows when the mind is idle, when the heart is undecided, and when the soul is not anchored to a mission. But when you are definite in your purpose, fear is overruled by the force of intent. Most people live without a clear purpose. They drift from one day to the next, reacting instead of creating, surviving instead of thriving. And in that state of drift, fear becomes a natural companion. So, when you don't know where you're going, every obstacle feels like a dead end. Every difficulty feels like a sign to quit. But when you have a purpose that is definite, when your vision is strong and vivid, you see fear for what it truly is, a test, not a termination. You begin to realize that fear is not there to stop you, but to strengthen you. It is simply part of the process of becoming who you need to be to fulfill what you were meant to do. Definiteness of purpose gives the mind a target. It eliminates distraction and invites discipline. It turns vague wishes into concrete goals. And when you have a goal that captures your heart and soul, fear is diminished by desire. A burning desire has the power to consume fear. The fire of purpose is stronger than the shadow of death. People with definite purpose don't stop because they feel afraid. Coast, they move forward because their purpose matters more than their comfort. They have decided, and that decision becomes a weapon against the paralysis of fear. Purpose brings meaning to pain. It transforms obstacles into stepping stones. Without purpose, pain is just suffering. But with purpose, pain becomes preparation. It becomes part of the story you tell one day about how you overcame, how you endured, how you rose. That story begins the moment you become definite about what you're here to do. Fear begins to evaporate when you realize that your life has a direction, that your steps are not random, and that your journey has significance. Think about any person who has ever done something extraordinary, whether they were inventing, building, leading, healing, or creating. They had one thing in common: definiteness of purpose. They had a mission that was greater than their fear. They were not immune to fear, but they were anchored in something deeper. Their purpose gave them resolve. It gave them grit. It gave them the ability to keep moving even when everything inside them said stop. That's the power of definiteness. It silences the noise of doubt and amplifies the voice of conviction. Fear always speaks loudest when you're unsure. It echoes in the mind that lacks direction. But when you wake up every day knowing exactly why you're here and what you're moving toward, fear begins to quiet down. It can't compete with a mind that has already made up its mind. When your intention is clear, your path becomes clearer. You begin to attract the right people, the right opportunities, and the right resources, not by luck, but by the magnetic pull of purpose. Fear cannot thrive in that environment. It withers in the light of conviction. Clarity creates courage. When you know what you're willing to fight for, you stop backing down from every challenge. You stop looking for reasons to quit and start finding reasons to persevere. Purpose gives you those reasons. It reminds you that your life is not random, your talents are not accidental, and your dreams are not foolish. They are assignments, and fear is just the resistance that comes with any worthwhile mission. People who are definite in their purpose know this. They expect fear to show up, but they are not intimidated by it. They have already decided who they are and what they are willing to endure to become who they must be. The truth is, you cannot be both fearful and focused at the same time. If your mind is filled with purpose, fear has no space to take root. That is why every great success begins not with talent, not with opportunity, but with a decision to commit, a decision to move forward, a decision to be definite. Once you make that decision, fear begins to shrink. Not because it disappears, but because your vision is now too big, too bold, too full of fire for fear to survive. Action is the antidote to fear. Fear is a mental and emotional response, a projection of what might go wrong, of how things could fall apart, of what others might think. It exists in the realm of imagination, not in the realm of experience. It feeds on inaction, on the unknown, on the moments where nothing is happening but everything is being worried about. The more you hesitate, the louder fear becomes. The more you overthink, the more powerful the fear appears. But the moment you move, the moment you take action, real, deliberate action, fear begins to lose its power. Fear cannot survive in the presence of movement. It relies on your stillness to thrive. It thrives in the quiet moments before a decision is made, before a step is taken. But once you start doing instead of dreading, once you shift from thought to execution, The illusion begins to fade. Action creates momentum, and momentum breaks the spell of fear. One small step can begin to unravel the web of worry. One decision, one conversation, one attempt can silence the voice that's been telling you to stay small, to stay safe, to stay still. To stay still. The mistake many people make is waiting to feel ready before they act. They wait for the fear to subside, for the perfect conditions to arrive, for the doubt to disappear. But that moment rarely comes. If you wait for fear to vanish, you may wait forever. What you must understand is that action does not follow confidence. Confidence is a byproduct of doing. Every time you act in the face of fear, you build proof that you're capable. You build evidence that you can handle more than your fear gave you credit for. And over time, that evidence stacks up until the fear no longer feels like noise. Taking action is not about grand gestures. It's about consistent movement. It's about doing the next right thing, even if it's small. The phone call, the email, the workout, the step forward, these are the acts that shift the mind from fear to focus. Each one is a declaration that you are not a prisoner of your emotions, that you are not ruled by the imagined consequences of failure. Instead, you are someone who acts, someone who chooses motion over paralysis, effort over excuse, boldness over retreat. Fear often makes the task ahead look bigger than it is. It inflates the risks and minimizes your ability to respond. But once you act, the distortion is broken. You see that what looked like a mountain was a hill, that what felt impossible was simply unfamiliar. Action turns the unknown into the known. It replaces assumption with experience. You no longer have to guess or imagine. You've done it, and you've lived to tell the story. That alone is power. That is how you build momentum, and momentum becomes a force that fear cannot match. There's a reason fear hates commitment. When you commit to something and follow through with action, you are rewriting your mental narrative. You are shifting your identity from someone who is controlled by fear to someone who controls their response to it. That shift is internal, but it changes everything externally. Risks you once avoided. You start speaking up where you once stayed silent. You start moving toward goals that once felt too distant. And all of it began not with a change in how you felt, but with a change in what you did. Action also creates clarity. When you sit in fear, your mind becomes cloudy. Every decision feels overwhelming. Every path seems uncertain. But when you take action, clarity begins to emerge. You learn through doing. You discover what works and what doesn't. You find strengths you didn't know you had. You uncover strategies, insights, and abilities that fear kept hidden. This is why those who act grow faster than those who... They're not necessarily smarter or more talented. They're simply moving, they're learning, adapting, growing in real time, while fear is still trying to talk others out of starting. Fear is always louder before the first step. It loses volume with every step forward. But that silence only comes to those who are willing to act before they feel ready. To those who understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. The habit of action is one of the most powerful tools you can develop. It turns hesitation into habit, fear into fuel, resistance into resilience. It puts you back in control, not because the fear is gone, but because you've learned how to move through it. You've learned that doing something, anything, is more powerful than being stuck in thought. Failure is not what should be feared. Stagnation is. The real danger is not in falling short, but in standing still. Too many people spend their lives avoiding failure, thinking that if they never make a mistake, they'll somehow arrive at success. But that's not how success is built. Success is forged in the furnace of trial and error, of effort and adjustment, of falling and getting back up. Every great achiever, every inventor, every leader has failed, not once, but many times. What set them apart was their refusal to stop. They did not fear failure. They feared the idea of living a life that never reached its full potential. The fear of failure often comes from pride, from a desire to appear perfect, to never be seen struggling. But that same pride becomes a prison. It keeps people from starting new things, from taking bold steps, from learning and evolving. They would rather be safe and stagnant than risk and grow. But there is no growth without discomfort. There is no mastery without missteps. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. It is the path through which understanding is deepened, resilience is developed, and strength is built. Stagnation, on the other hand, slowly robs a person of their energy, creativity, and drive. It doesn't show up dramatically. It creeps in over time. It starts with small compromises, with dreams postponed, with risks avoided. And before long, the fire begins to fade. The dreamer becomes a spectator in their own life, watching others move forward while they remain stuck. They justify their stillness with logic. It's not the right time. I don't want to rush it. Or what if it doesn't work? But deep down, they know what's really happening. They're letting fear dictate their direction. You cannot wait your way into greatness. Waiting does not sharpen your skills or multiply your resources. Growth happens through action, and action involves risk. Every attempt is a lesson. Every setback is a stepping stone. The only way to avoid all failure is to do nothing, and that is the greatest failure of all. Because while you're standing still, time is moving. Opportunities are passing. Life is not waiting. It's unfolding, and those who have the courage to try, to fail, and to try again are the ones who get to shape it. The most successful people have a different relationship with failure. They do not see it as defeat. They see it as data. Every failure teaches them something. It gives them feedback, insight, direction. They study it. They ask, what did I miss? What can I adjust? How can I be better next time? They do not internalize failure as a statement of their worth. Well, they understand that failure is an event, not an identity. And because of that mindset, they move quickly, they experiment often, and they grow rapidly. Stagnation, by contrast, is subtle and deceptive. It doesn't feel like a failure at first. It feels like safety, like control. But over time, it breeds frustration. The dreams that once inspired you begin to feel like burdens. The passion that once fueled you begins to fade. And eventually, the fear of failure becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't try, so you don't progress. You don't progress, so you feel stuck. You feel stuck, so you stop trying altogether. The cycle continues until the life you're living bears no resemblance to the life you once imagined. It takes more courage to try and fail than to do nothing and stay comfortable, but only one of those paths leads to growth. Only one builds character, wisdom, and strength. The people you admire, the ones who inspire you, they didn't get there by playing it safe. They took leaps, they made mistakes, they faced criticism, rejection, and loss, but they kept going. And because they kept going, they kept growing, they kept growing. That is the mindset that must be embraced. Failure is feedback, not finality. If you are afraid of failure, you will never unlock your full potential. You will never write the book, start the business, take the chance, or step into the unknown. And yet everything you want, every goal, every dream, every breakthrough lives beyond that fear. It's on the other side of the moment you decide that stagnation is no longer acceptable. That staying stuck is more painful than falling short. That not knowing what could have been is worse than trying and coming up short. You will never regret trying. You will never regret putting your heart into something, even if it doesn't work out the first time. What you will regret is holding back, staying silent, shrinking when you should have stepped up. Fear of failure can be powerful, but your desire to grow, to live fully, to leave a mark must be more powerful still. Fear is a signal, not a stop sign. It is not an enemy to be eliminated, but a messenger to be understood. Far too often, people misinterpret fear as a warning to retreat, to avoid, to back down. But fear in its sign is a sign that something matters. It shows up when you are on the edge of growth, when you are facing something unknown, unfamiliar, or deeply important. Fear is not always a red light. More often than not, it is a yellow light, a call to pause, evaluate, and proceed with intention. Thank you. It is not there to stop you. It is there to sharpen you. Every person who has ever achieved greatness has felt fear. The difference is in how they responded to it. They listened to it, but they didn't obey it. They understood that fear was part of the process, that it meant they were stepping out of comfort and into calling. The presence of fear was not a sign to turn back, but proof that they were on the right path. If you feel no fear, it's likely because you're not stretching, not reaching, not risking, not risking. Duh. True progress demands that you step into places that test you, that shake you, that make you question whether you're really ready. Fear reveals what you care about. It points directly to your deepest values, your truest desires. You fear failure because success matters to you. You fear rejection because connection and approval matter to you. You fear risk because the outcome could impact your life in a meaningful way. Fear should not be ignored. It should be examined. Ask it questions. What is this fear trying to protect? What is it pointing me toward? Look, Jim, what am I afraid of losing? And is the cost of staying the same higher than the cost of stepping forward? When you shift your perspective on fear, you gain power over it. You begin to see it not as something that controls you, but as something you can learn from. You see it as a companion on your journey, not a leader, but a passenger. You acknowledge it, but you do not hand it the wheel. Fear can inform you, but it should never direct you. It can alert you to potential danger, but it should not dictate your direction. You must become the kind of person who hears fear but acts on faith, who feels fear but moves in truth. Fear is often loudest right before a breakthrough. It intensifies when you are on the verge of something new, something big, something transformative. That surge of fear is not a sign to back off. It is confirmation that you are stepping into something significant. In those moments, your job is not to eliminate fear, but to ground yourself in your vision, to remember why you started, to reconnect with your values, your mission, your purpose. That inner anchor will keep you steady even as fear tries to shake you loose. You must also recognize that fear lies. It exaggerates outcomes. It highlights the worst case scenario and hides the best case possibility. It tells you stories of failure, humiliation, and loss while silencing the stories of growth, success, and fulfillment. That is why fear must be challenged, not blindly accepted. You have to counter its voice with truth. You have to remind yourself of your resilience, your preparation, your ability to adapt. You have to confront the fear not with denial, but with determination. Fear can be transformed into fuel. That surge of energy that comes with fear, that quickened heartbeat, that nervous energy, that heightened awareness, it can be redirected into focus, into courage, into action. Athletes feel it before a game. Speakers feel it before a performance. Leaders feel it before a big decision. Fear doesn't go away, but it becomes part of their edge. It reminds them that what they're doing matters, that they're alive, engaged, and in motion. When you learn how to harness fear instead of running from it, you gain access to a new level of strength. There's wisdom in fear, but it must be filtered. Not all fear is irrational. Sometimes it points to something you genuinely need to address. But much of the fear that holds people back is rooted in imagination, not reality. It's the fear of what might happen, not what is actually happening. You must learn to distinguish between protective fear and paralyzing fear. One keeps you safe, the other keeps you small, and you were not made to live a small life. You were made to rise, to reach, to expand into your full potential, and that means learning to walk with fear, not behind it, not under it, but beside it with your eyes fixed on where you're going.